Hello, I'm Ogiermann from King's College London in the UK, and I'll be presenting part 6 of module 4. The module is the pragmatics of emotion, and my part will be about hotel management to customer communication, emotions in responses to negative online feedback. This part of the module looks at the responses to negative online feedback left for hotels especially. Online feedback is very valuable to businesses. It functions, first of all, as a quality assurance tool. People get to know what customers think and can improve things accordingly. But it is also a free marketing tool, and it's massive because it can reach out to millions of internet users who might not have heard about the business before. At the same time, online reviews tend to be subjective, as they report on the customer's perceptions of the quality of the service, not the actual quality. Consumers' reviews are often motivated by affective elements of satisfaction, such as pleasure, sadness, anger, and disappointment. The thing is that usually people who take the trouble of writing a review either were really happy with it and want to share it with other people, or they had a problem with it and would like to complain. So sometimes these online reviews serve as opportunities to publicly air grievances about their experience. Now, despite their high degree of subjectivity, online reviews are viewed as more trustworthy by other customers than information supplied by the hotels themselves. And this is not surprising because you could imagine the hotel, of course, posting the most beautiful pictures of the most beautiful rooms they have, whereas customers might supply you with a side of the story that the hotels would not like to expose to you. And it has actually been established that about 3/4 of all travelers consult online reviews when planning their trips, and more than half of them would not book a hotel that does not have any reviews at all. So these reviews really play a very important role. The main focus of this module is on how hotels respond to negative online reviews on TripAdvisor, and we'll be looking at 3 specific responses from 3 different hotels, which actually have very good ratings overall. Negative feedback obviously needs to be monitored very carefully in order to manage customer satisfaction, retention, making sure they're coming back, and the acquisition of new customers who might see the reviews. It's been established that effective responses can increase loyalty, so people returning to the hotel and recommending it to other customers, their friends and colleagues, by more than 20%. Of course, negative reviews can have very detrimental effects on the business itself because it causes damage to the reputation and the revenue in the long term. But also, you have to consider the individuals involved in this, so people who actually work at the hotel, people who are being blamed for something in the review, people who have to respond to those reviews. They might, of course, feel less satisfied with their jobs. It might have an impact on their performance. There might be even financial penalties, and they might even lose their job. Having to deal with negative reviews then can lead to very negative emotions, especially if the reviews are unjustified, if they're exaggerated or simply untrue. But you need to keep in mind the responses that you produce are public. So they're not only read by the reviewers, they're mainly also read by potential customers who might be put off if you do not respond accordingly. TripAdvisor actually provides a list of guidelines for responding to online reviews, which state that the responses should be, among other things, professional, courteous, and respectful. And they warn the people responding to those online reviews not to resort to profanity, threats, accusations, and insults, even if the reviews themselves include all these things. And here is a quote from an interview with a hotel manager who explains how, at that particular hotel, things are being dealt with. So he says, "We have a guideline for responding to online reviews. They have to use proper language, indicate name and title, ensure that you have investigated the case and consult a related department to have facts, to be a good listener, make no judgment, because customers are the ones who make judgments. We are not supposed to judge customers for their judgments," he says. The reply to reviews is based on facts. To investigate, we have everything documented, customers' names, time of stay, staff schedule, camera, etc. So we just track back to those documents to know about the case. Even though the investigation is a little time consuming sometimes, we have to solve it quickly so that it takes a maximum of 24 hours to respond to the review. That's quite tough, actually. The other thing that hotels seem to have is prepared expressions, linguistic expressions of phrases which they recycle across responses to make sure they cover certain points that need covering. This is the first example I would like to show you. It comes from Hilton in central London, where somebody makes it very clear that they are resorting to standardized expressions which are used in responses to online reviews in that particular establishment. So the response runs, "Dear X, thank you for taking the time to post your comments here on TripAdvisor. I was really sorry to read about your disappointment following your stay at our hotel. I entirely understand how frustrating the whole experience must have been for you, and I may assure you the issue was discussed and reviewed with the relevant department. I would like to take the opportunity to sincerely apologize on behalf of the team in relation to the inconvenience you have experienced. Please do not hesitate to contact me directly on so-and-so with kind regards." This reads very polite and nice. It's got a lot of politeness content in it. It's got a greeting, "Dear so-and-so, thank you for taking the time," is appreciating or showing appreciation for the review that has been left. There are apologies in two different forms. "I was really sorry to read and I sincerely apologize." And there is an offer of further contact and of course a parting formula with kindest regards. Here we're using the superlative. So on the whole, this comes across as very caring. However, if you look at the blue bits, you see that the actual response refers to a disappointment, the whole experience, the issue, and a relevant department, and an inconvenience that has been experienced. All these expressions indicate that the person writing this response is actually not really referring to what has happened, and it's not clear whether the problem that has been discussed, whatever it is, because this review response doesn't show it at all, whether that has actually been attended to. So we have a mixture of formality, politeness, and a very distancing, vague reference to might have happened. Okay, the second one I will not read in its entirety. If you would like to read it, just stop the MOOC and take a look at it properly now. The first things I've identified were again politeness formulae. There is the thanking, as always, "Thank you for your review." There is an apology for an error. Again, the person is very sorry for an error and very sorry that the person who wrote the review was disappointed. They hope to welcome them back soon, and they offer assistance and want to be contacted and are happy to do things for the customer. So on the whole, this is again very polite and very correct in terms of customer care. We also identify other elements here where we clearly see that the person writing this response has actually investigated the case, because they say something like "that has never occurred previously," explains what it really was that happened. They also mention positive things. Obviously, if something has never happened before, this means it's a one-off, it's not a fault with a hotel in general. And they mention that the customer actually liked their stay in the classic double room and that everything was being done to make their experience as pleasurable or pleasant as possible. So they're mentioning the positive aspects of the stay as well. Then we have expressions of empathy as well. The person writing the response says, "I can understand what you've been through. I'm glad to hear that you liked the other aspects of your stay." And they're also saying, "I'm certain we'll be able to exceed your expectations and provide you with a stay that you should have received if you ever come back." So they're actually really showing that they care about their customer. Finally, we get an offer of compensation as well. I do hope that you are able to accept our complimentary upgrade to the signature category on a future occasion. This, of course, is also a strategy of customer retention while giving them some special attention if they do come back. Now, the third one is a different one. We also see emotions here, but they're of a completely different kind. This is a hotel in Spain for a change. And again, just to show you, there is politeness. The politeness, however, is pretty much restricted to the greeting and parting formula. In relation to that, we also see that the hotel makes an effort to show that actually whatever is being reported is not typical for the hotel. they say if something differentiates the Hotel Sorolla Centro from other hotels in the city, is the excellent care that our staff always gives to our guests. And you can read it, of course, on the other 400 comments, which were all positive. And they also say our receptionist attended you at the check-in time with education and respect. So there is a great focus within this review to show that the hotel actually does function properly and other people are happy with it. It also does a thing which shows emotions, but they are not positive emotions towards the experiences of the customer. They're negative emotions of the person writing the review. First of all, he states that he is surprised. And all the staff at the hotels were actually surprised. Everybody was surprised, which means this can't be really true. They're doubting the sincerity of the review. And also, they part with the customer by saying, if you plan to return again to Valencia, I personally thank you if you make a reservation in any other hotel of the city that wants to endure your rudeness. This very obviously, even though it directs itself or addresses the person who wrote the review, is not meant to serve as a customer retention strategy. It is very clearly meant to show other customers that this reviewer was wrong and that the hotel is great nonetheless. Obviously, all three hotels I've chosen had very good ratings overall, and they're using very, very different strategies to attract customers and retain customers. Previous research has shown that some strategies within responses to reviews recur very frequently. They're usually apologies and they're usually expressions of appreciation, thanking for the review. When you look at the compensation or the active follow-up, where people actually engage with what has happened, these are a lot less frequent. So there is a general problem that people use formulaic language to acknowledge things. Sometimes they explain them, but very little is actually done to follow them up and show the customer that whatever they complained about has been fixed. Another study has shown that only 19 out of 80 in that case responses to reviews analyzed, provided explanations about the cause. That's less than a quarter, where people actually took the trouble to explain what happened and why the customer had the experience that they did have, or explained that something is being done about it. And 30 out of 80 the responses were completely generic, like the one we've seen at the beginning. That means they did not refer to the contents of the review whatsoever. They could have been used to any complaint. And it's questionable, of course, whether the customer being responded to like this is likely to be happy with that response, given that it doesn't seem to refer to anything they said. And of course, something that we'll find a lot is that reviews use near identical syntactic and lexical patterns. This is, of course, more likely to occur in countries where English perhaps is not the native language of the people dealing with customer complaints, and they just resort to whatever they have available and try to fix it as best as they can. So we have seen 3 responses to negative reviews, and all of them tried to manage the reputation of the hotel, but they varied greatly in several respects, namely in the extent to which they actually engage with the review or rely on formulaic expressions, which can be received as something completely unhelpful on the part of the customer. They also varied in the focus on addressing the reviewer or the broader audience. We've seen the 3rd review where, even though it said you, which was supposed to be the person that was getting the response, actually the actual audience was the people reading both the review and the response, and meant for those people to sympathize with the business rather than the customer. And of course, these 3 responses we've looked at vary in the extent to which they express positive and negative emotions. Positive emotions towards the customer, empathy towards their experiences, and negative emotions of the person responding to the review and possibly trying to win over people despite the negative review. Well, thank you very much. That was part 4, module 4, part 6. Thank you.